you guys know this is our Pure Soul member hour-long Zoom that we get to talk about whatever you want. I did put a couple ideas out there from the video about our calling and finding our calling and our passion and our purpose. So we can cover a little bit of that. If anybody wants to share or ask any questions. Did everybody get to watch the video?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so we can start there, or if you guys have other questions or personal things that you want to talk about, we could also start there. Why don't we start there? Does anybody have any personal things, questions, curiosities that they want to cover today? Okay, so why don't we, okay, what's your question?
Okay, so it took me forever to figure out my damn calling. and,
Okay.
and so finally, when you confirmed it for me, I started thinking about it. So your life calling, when you figure it out, you can actually use it for negative also, can't you?
Everything is both positive and negative. Like even when I teach the workshop of Alma Pura state of being, some people, their conditioning is created from a very positive memory and a positive experience, while other people's is created from a negative experience or a negative memory. And it really doesn't matter, because if it's negative, you're going to try to avoid it. If it's positive, you're going to try to achieve it. So either way, you're going to face a struggle on both sides. So everything that is about our spirit, that's actually where our free will exists, is how do you want to use this thing that you have? You can use it for positive or you can use it for negative. And a lot of people will have a calling or have, you know, something that they're really good at that they will then in turn use as a power over people instead of a gift for people. So some people in their calling, they are so within themselves, they're so balanced with themselves that they start to gain a little bit of a sense of pride about the success of their calling, because a calling is prompted by God. And so anything prompted by God is going to make you feel an inner sense of accomplishment or an inner sort of pride in that connection. But that's really when your humanity is surrendered to your soul and the idea of your calling. But it usually works out when it's a calling. And so when that happens, our human self can sometimes develop a little bit of an ego about how good we are at our calling. And then we can utilize that. Instead of it being a gift, we use it as a power over people. And then we can pick and choose, and we become God, because then we decide who is worthy of my gift. Where everybody is worthy of your calling, because it's for all of humanity, not just who your self picks and chooses from. Which is why when they talk about Jesus and he had a gift and his missionary that he was sharing with people, he didn't say, oh, you're rich, you deserve my gift, but you're poor and you do not, and you're a leper, and oh, I don't want to be near you, but I'll be near the, you know, the priest or the Pharisees. And so when you think about Jesus's mission and Jesus's calling, he didn't discriminate or use his calling as a power over anyone. His expression on earth was a gift to everyone. He didn't try to take an ego perspective or tell the, you know, Pontius Pilate, oh yeah, I'm the one, like you just get away from me, I'm the God, you know, bye-bye, like I can control you. He didn't use what his calling was as a power over anyone. And that's where humanity then falters in the calling, because when we gather that pride, you'll notice that people that begin in a calling, and then you might look at them 5 years later and be like, wow, it used to feel different when they did this. It's because they've gathered too much of an ego, and now they think it's them and they're not in a mode of surrender. So now they elevate above you. And so that's just, I don't know how I got to that part of the conversation, but that's actually one of the things that I find since I started doing this. And maybe it's because I never wanted to be blamed, because my whole life I was like blamed for stuff, that when I would get an intuitive connection, I did not want to take responsibility for it. I'm like, I don't know if that's what your mom said. Like, I'm just telling you what your mom, like you said, that's your mom, right? Like you confirmed that that's your mom. Does that sound like something your mom would say? Okay, then that's your mom. That's not me. So I was so afraid of like taking that type of responsibility, like speaking for the people in heaven. Like I didn't want to do that. And even though all the information was always right, that's not me. And
Mhm.
so I found that when you are in your calling, people will tell you, oh, wow, you did great. That's awesome. And I always am reminding myself, yeah, that wasn't me. That was them. Like I'm a parakeet. They tell me something, I repeat something. And we want to be cautious of how we utilize our calling on earth because that part is our free will.
It also kind of blew my mind of how, so is your calling always tied to your soul job, or it doesn't have to be?
Well, your soul job, however you do it on earth, that's up to you.
What do you mean? So like
Like,
mine tied together, which kind of, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool.
so your soul job, like my soul job is empathy. I decide, and my earth conditioning indicates how I'm going to use empathy. And then that becomes my calling. So now I'm working in my calling. I was an empath my whole entire life. That's my soul job. How do I utilize my soul job? That's my calling.
Oh, I
And
gotcha.
that's what I'm doing today is in my calling. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, I had it reversed.
How do you mean you had it reversed?
Well, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about the fact that you come here with a soul job, duh. And then when you get here, you figure out how you're going to actually apply your soul job to the world, to your life.
It's kind of like nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is it? Is it it's always, that's the big question, nature versus nurture, but it's not nature versus nurture. It's nurture and nature
Mm-hmm.
because you come here with a nature and the world nurtures it for you. I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe that it was decided that I was going to be an empath when I got here. I think I came that way.
Mm-hmm. Which is
And
your soul
then,
job.
yeah, I think I came that way. So then I'm up in heaven and God is like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'll be an empath. He's like, cool. I'm going to send you to this family and they're going to teach you how to be an empath. I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay, great. So now I'm here and my life enhances my soul job. And if our parents knew what our soul job was when we came, we would not be fighting with our parents all the time because then our parents would help nurture the nature of our soul job as opposed to raising us according to the way society says and what are you going to master in when you get to college because you have to make a lot of money. You say, oh no, what is my child's soul job? My child's, if my parents knew I was an empath, they wouldn't think I was a hypochondriac. Oh my God, they thought, they spent their whole life taking me to people thinking I'm crazy because I get magical illnesses that the doctors can't prove, but I could give you the whole list. I mean, my grandpa was in the hospital for a heart attack. I had symptoms of a heart attack. I'm 12 years old. They're like, oh my God, she sounds like she's having a heart attack. But come to find out, no, it was my grandpa having the heart attack, and they put me on a machine and they didn't see anything. So my poor parents, my whole life, they had no idea that that's what I was. So if they knew that, would they have thought I was a hypochondriac? Would they have taken me to a social worker to say, my kid's crazy, instead of finding somebody to help me deal with the empathy? Like if they knew that, I mean, they're my parents, they love me. If they know that, then they can nurture me according to why I'm here. So, like when Marissa came and when Marissa was born and they put her in my arms, the light around her body was so damn bright, like it came out of her body. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I don't know how long we're going to get this one. Like, her soul does not fit in her body. Like, no bullshit with this kid. Like, this is truth. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's truth. Like, how is that going to stay in the body, And so I'm not kidding you. She was, and I knew that. I was like, okay, I can't lie to this kid. I can't candy coat for this kid. I have to tell her the truth about everything. So she's 5 years old, and I'm sitting in the kitchen in the living room, and she's in the living room. And I say, "Hey, Marissa, will you go get mom a soda from the refrigerator?" And she goes, "Why? Because you don't have legs and you think I'm your mate?" And I was like, she's truth, right? And I'm like, so I get up and I get my own soda, and Brittany almost had a meltdown. She's like, "Oh, oh, 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 mom's gonna kill you." Like, she was so, and I was so astounded by her truth and her direct approach that I was like, I remembered the day she was born, and I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew how she was, and when Brittany was born, I mean, kids tell you who they are, right? We just try to make them different. So when Brittany was born, that kid, she was like trying to talk to me. Literally, when she was 5 months old, she was talking. When she was 8 months old, she could tell me what was bothering her in her body. What hurts? My ear. What hurts? My head. Like, she knew these things as like an infant. So I know she's a communicator. She has to express. She's going to only find herself through words, through communication. That girl, you have to talk to her. She's a communicator. She needs to share everything through communication. If she reads a book, you never have to read it. And you could pass a test and you could get an A, because when she tells you what the book is about, she will communicate every detail and put it in a way that will it'll blow your mind. And then you come to find out, if I read the book, it's better if she reads the book and tells me about the book, because then I'll understand everything about the book. If I read the book all by myself, I'm not going to understand the whole book. And that's how she was when she was born. So that's what I nurtured in her. Talk to me. How was your day? How was the movie? Did you watch the movie? Tell me about the movie. And I would sit there for an hour and be astounded by her style of communication. But that's who she said she was when she was born. Mm-hmm. And Marissa said, "No bullshit. We're going to talk truth," when she was born. So if I see that about my children, and it's not because I'm intuitive, it's because, I told you, yes, I saw her light, but then I saw her behavior. So I could have corrected her. I could have told her, "You don't talk to me that way. You get up and you get me a soda. I'm your mother. You're the child. You're 5. You do what I say." I can't do that with her because that's not who she is. But Brittany's a communicator. So if Brittany said that to me because she's a communicator, I say, "Wait a minute, that's disrespectful. You don't talk to mommy like that. You should say, 'No, mommy, I don't want to get you that.'" Because we're not covering truth. We're covering style of communication. You are a communicator. I'm supposed to guide you in your communication style. That's what I'm supposed to do.
So you nurtured her that way.
Yes. And then her calling is whatever she chooses to do with that communication style. Is it writing? Is it reading? Is it reciting? Is it speaking? Is it motivating? Is it, what is it? That's her calling based on her nature, which is her soul job.
So is your calling always related to your soul job, or like Pam, do you mind sharing how yours?
Sure, Pam.
Are, and if how they're related?
Sure. So my soul job is savior or rescuer. Okay. And so after I watched the video, I was kind of I was perplexed, because I was like, oh shit. I even went through I looked at the worksheet Nick put together too. And I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is my calling? I mean, I literally was like just walking around dumbfounded thinking, oh God, I don't even understand what this is. Right. And so all of a sudden I started going outside and I was cleaning the garage, and all of a sudden I had this flashback to this memory, and I'm like, oh my God, there's no way that's my calling. Right. I'm like, that is just really.
And what was the memory?
I'm trying to think what it was now, and I can't think oh, so yeah. So, I grew up on South Side Chicago, and a lot of the people I grew up with actually still live in the neighborhood. Okay. And so I was like 20 years old or so. We're at the local bar, Everybody's whooping it up, having a blast. I went and I'm sitting outside in the back on a picnic table thinking, this is just not for me. I want some kind of better life so that I can take care of my family. I can take care of those I love. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to do it in this scenario. Right. And so I thought of this memory and I was like, oh my God, there's just no way. That's it. So I talked to Nick later on. I'm like, this memory comes to me, but that's just kind of so far fetched. And she starts laughing at me and she goes, really? Really? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So really, what is it? She goes, you explained it to yourself already. You want to take care of yourself, take care of your family. So you will do things. You will always be there for someone. You will actually be the person that'll show up for people, whatever it is that they need, because you're going to want to be there for them. So that kind of has turned out. And frankly, if you need me, you call me, I'll be there. What do you need? $5? Oh, you need me just to pick up your dog? Whatever it is, I'll do it, So.
You're a willing participant.
Well, with what I thought was my sole purpose as a truth speaker, because you've told me that was my sole purpose before. And, when I watched the video with my calling, okay, of course, I'm a musician and I do all that kind of stuff too, but I immediately thought of how I liked, my thing is houses. I like to fix houses. I buy old houses, I rehab them. I know how to do a lot of the stuff myself. Of course, I'm getting a little too old for that. So I've got my people that I hire to do certain things. But, I just, when I was a kid, I remember as a little girl in the basement, my dad would be working at his workshop and he had this table saw. And I was like, oh, cool. I always want to be right there by his side. And of course, that was in the 60s. I was born in 1960, so, and girls didn't do that. It's like, Sue, get out of here. This is dangerous. Go by your mother. So then I go by my mom. She taught me how to iron and sew, which was fine. I could do it, but I really wanted to be in the workshop. And then when I was 11, I had this 10-speed bicycle that was, I wanted to paint it a different color. So I took it all apart, all the pieces off, and I was going to wet sand it down and spray paint it. I knew I could do this. My dad came home and saw me. He was like, no, because he knew that I wouldn't be able to put it back together because I just threw all the pieces in a box. And he was right, and I couldn't. And it was just one more chore that he would have to do, right? And that really kind of set me back. And I was upset about that for a lot of years. And then when I was 17, my little brother, John, got a mini bike. And I'm like, how did you get a mini bike? I've always wanted. I used to hang out at a little Mark's house down the street and watch him work on his mini bike, and watch him work on like motors and things. And because girls didn't do that back then. Well, by the time I was a homeowner and the plumber estimate was outrageous, and I'm thinking, this can't be that hard. And instead of going to YouTube, back then I had to go to the library and get a VHS tape on how to do PVC plumbing. Took a week off, bought the tools, tore it all out, did all this stuff, saved myself like $6,000 or $5,000, I think I saved. And I was like, I'm a plumber. I could do this, I could do that. And it was like one thing after another. And, it was first started out with my house and then went to another house, but I lose time when I'm doing these projects, right? And I have this thing for houses. I always feel like I need to help people get houses. And so I became a home inspector. And I took the realtor course too, just for my own information. And, I've helped young people like, oh yeah, this is a good house for you. All you need to do is fix this up, get it while it's cheap and live in it. And, and so I think that's my calling. But what the heck does that have to do with being a truth speaker? And is it really my calling? Or is it just something that I like to do?
Maybe what you're doing is, maybe
music.
if your calling is to seek truth, that is helping people find their truth and helping them. You wouldn't sell a house to somebody you didn't think should be in that house. You don't try to swindle people or get the big profit. If you think that's a good house for them, that's the house you put them in. So that's the job you're doing. It's where you can do your soul job.
Oh, like enabling people to
yes
their house.
So
I do it all the time. I help people all the time with that.
Yeah, and if you're a realtor, of course you're going to be the house inspector and not the realtor, because a schmoozer
so
realtor shop But a house inspector, because when you went through your whole story and you told everything, what you identified was everything that goes into an end result. The end result of your bike being fixed up, the end result of your brother having a bike, the end result of fixing up a house. You don't think of the end result. You identified all the little pieces that go into it. That the truth is, how does this situation create itself? And as a truth speaker, you're the home inspector, because you're going to be like, yeah, this house is great, but that door doesn't close all the way. That's windows replaced,
Yeah.
right? That's how your sole job of truth comes out of your body into the world, right?
Well, I guess that's a good way of relating it. Yeah.
That's Brittany, my communicator. So like I said,
Thank you, Brittany.
Amanda, question.
Sure, Amanda.
I guess I can, you've probably told me what my soul job is in the past. I feel like I can assume it, but I guess I have a question about me being in occupational therapy and being like an OT student. I recently, or today, I was thinking about this, and it's funny that you're talking about it, but someone came in and started talking about hand therapy, and that's a branch, I guess, of occupational therapy. And then I suddenly like remembered moments where I was a teenager and I wanted to like preserve my joints, or like, you know, because I was in color guard and I was like, I shouldn't continue doing color guard because I don't want to end up with arthritis. And I'm like, what 16-year-old or 18-year-old thinks about that? It's kind of weird. And then I got sick and was in the hospital at one point when I was 18, and I was half there, half not there. And all I could think about were my hands and like how important they were to me. But I thought it was because I was involved in art classes and stuff. But now I'm wondering if I'm going to be in hand therapy, and are these like messages, you know, that I'm like thinking back to like times when I was younger of, I don't know, it just seems like an odd connection.
Like our hands you're calling.
Yeah, our hands, my calling, I guess.
So when you're talking about it, actually, I keep getting a vision of an old woman that had severe arthritis in her hands, and they were like this. So when you're talking about that, it comes from like right behind your sacral chakra into your solar plexus. So that concern actually comes from a past life experience.
When you were the old lady, when you were the grandma lady.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
So that idea or that understanding is actually part of your soul. So when you do your job of OT, that matches your sacral chakra and your solar plexus, but you're going to complete that, but it's maybe not the last thing you're supposed to complete.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So I do think you're going to continue moving forward, but no, I have you working on OT stuff right now. Like that feels like it comes to completion. And then there's a couple years where you're working and then you're focused on something else. So it feels like you might move forward on that, at that note, like once you're in your career for a couple years.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I assume that my sole job, because I'm involved in this, would be empathy, but I don't know.
Both jobs are about empathy. Because in empathy, you put yourself in their situation. OT does the same thing. How is this person with only one arm going to do this task? So you're consistently in your soul job of empathy doing that work, period.
Okay.
It would be a little deeper and it would take on a different aspect if you go into hand therapy.
Okay. Interesting.
Both of them are empathy though.
Okay.
And if you learn how to prevent arthritis, I want to know.
Me too.
Because there's nothing on the internet that tells me.
Joy, when I ask your spirit about your soul job, she reaches out of your sacral chakra and starts putting out her hand to everybody around. Are you the relationship lady? Are you the one that connects people to other people? Are you the one that's the best friend? You're the one that's very involved in keeping relationships going and connecting people to one another?
I don't know if I would say I'm the relationship person, but I am the one that a lot of people come to talk to, maybe more like a therapist or a like a life coach type.
Like literally the vision of you. And when I ask your spirit is in the sacral chakra. It doesn't matter who comes to you. Your hand is outstretched. You're shaking their hand. You're welcoming them in. You're the one that's accepting them there. It doesn't matter who they are. And that's what I'm saying. Like you can, well, in my vision, it looks like you're fostering relationships with people. And if you are the one that everybody drops the problems on and you have to do the counseling, the thing that draws them to you is your openness to a connection with them. That's the first thing they see. They see your willingness. They see, like, you know, if I walk into a room and I say hi to 3 people in the room, you're the one that's probably going to respond to me the best. So of course I'm going to gravitate towards you because you're like welcoming. Do you see that about yourself?
In most situations, yes.
Okay. So if this is your natural self, that's kind of how you are. That in itself is why people feel like they can drop a problem on you or you can counsel them, is because you first develop something with them that makes them feel like they're in a relationship with you, like they're accepted by you, like they feel comfortable with you. Do you see that?
Yeah. And
like
I'm
just
told all the
generally,
time.
like with, I'm sorry,
And people tell me that all the time.
like what do they say?
Just that, you know, they felt like they knew me forever when we first met. They can tell me anything type of.
That's exactly what I mean. Like you could just meet them, but they think you're their best friend. Like it's so comfortable. You make them feel that way in relationships. So like that's what I see as your soul job. It's like welcoming. It's like what I was talking about at the beginning, like the Jesus thing. Like he welcomed everybody. Like there is no like, no, not you. Oh no, not you. Like it's literally your spirit shows me everything. So I would say that the actual soul job is the welcoming. That's really the thing that draws people in. And then it moves to your solar plexus. That's when it becomes a calling. So the soul job is, you know how Jesus says, like, come to me and you'll find rest, like, come to me. That's what your spirit does. Come to me, like, just come to me. And then whatever you need, when you come to me, I can help you with that. That's like literally what I see your soul job as. When I see that happen in your sacral chakra, it comes up into your solar plexus. At the time it comes into your solar plexus, that's where it becomes your calling. And then your advice giving is because of your own life. Like you're smart, you're logical, you know how to look at things in different perspectives. And I think your life taught you that. I think that that's your nurture, where your nature is, I welcome you, come to me, you'll find rest, you'll be in a safe place here with me. And then whatever they need, that's what you're able to do. And I think that that part comes from your own life experience and the things that you've seen, the things you've witnessed, the things you've been through. That's how you utilize your calling. You share the other half of yourself. So it's very much like a body soul friendship that works really well together. So that's what I think you do. And in doing that, it's like you have this light in your crown chakra that says, because your calling is as a part of your life, your spirit self like helps you gather intuition to help the people that come to you. So like maybe I say to you, oh, you know, my husband was so mean to me today. And then you think of that time that your husband was a real dick and you're like, oh my God, this one time my husband, trust me. like I totally know what you're talking about. Like your spirit will give you life reference in order to be on the same plane as me. So I don't feel like I'm a freak. Does that make sense to you?
For
Like
sure.
when I say it, it should resonate and you should be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what happens to me.
Yeah. all the
And so
time.
that's what I think your soul job is, and how you utilize that in your calling.
Thank you.
You know, like our earth experience and who we become on earth, that this is a way that we do our calling. Like, and our calling is, it can interrupt us in any life journey that we have. So I was a Marine, but then this one guy's grandpa came, and then all of a sudden people were knocking on my barracks door, like, will you talk to my grandma? Will you talk to my mom? And so I was a Marine, that was my job, but my calling was still part of that job. Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you do to earn your money. Your calling is eternal and it's consistent, and it is going to express itself no matter what you choose your job to be.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, as you know, I'm a realtor, but
Mhm.
it all of these things have just opened up for me the last year, where the calling is just like coming from everywhere. So I'm trying to like sort it all out, but it's easy to get lost too.
Mhm. It is, because we think we're supposed to do something. Like we're supposed to have, there has to be like some wow factor. But the wow factor happens in you because you feel so fucking happy when you're doing your calling. That's
Right.
the wow factor, right? But when we think, you know, am I in my calling? We think it should be something like that we measure as glorious or not glorious. And sometimes, you know, I knew somebody whose sole job was literally to smile at people. That was her sole job, to smile at people. And it was basically to draw up something to uncover their joy. So if you got on the train and she was on the train and you walked past, she'd be like, hi. And it didn't matter who walked past or how, but that's what she did. And you know, some people thought she was goofy, and so they would laugh because they were laughing at her, but they would laugh.
Right.
Everybody smiled no matter what their brains thought of her.
Right.
You see? And so that's her calling. Like that's her soul. That's her, you know, she came here with a soul job to elevate people's spirit, to bring something, a smile to their face, to uncover something buried inside. And she did. Right? That's
Yeah.
what she does. No matter what their brain thinks, she was successful.
Yeah.
Right. So
That's
we
amazing.
think it should be something huge, but sometimes it's just the smallest things. You
Right.
know?
Right. I feel like though, when your calling comes to you, it's very hard to ignore. It just
It
keeps
is
coming
very
at you
hard
in
to
every
ignore.
direction. Yeah.
It does. And everybody wants it from you too.
Yeah.
You know, like my daughter, you know, Brittany, her calling is communication, it's writing. So every time I write something, what do? Hey, can you just edit this? Can you look at this? Or I call her, I'm like, look, I need like like 3 sentences to describe this thing. Could you do that? It would take me like 5 hours, 10 seconds. She's like, how's that? And I'm like, oh my God, that's great. So you will see that when you're in your calling, people do reach out to you for that. If you realize it's your calling, and it will just come to you when you sit to do it. Sometimes we get like, why do people always call me for that? What am I supposed to do for them? Like, why are people depending on me for that? It's because it's your calling, and your soul shines like a beacon on a foggy night that says, pick me, pick me, pick me. Right. So
Yes.
it's not like you're not inviting that to your energy, that's what you said you were going to do. So yes, people are going to call you for that calling. And if it starts to feel like people need to stop calling me for this, then it means you haven't given yourself the gift of yourself. So if you're the writer, but you're not writing for yourself, but you're writing for everybody else, well, then you're not giving yourself your gift. So now it's going to piss you off when I call you and ask you to write for me. Sorry,
That
I'm
makes
just using it
sense.
as an example, honey. I'm sorry, Britt, but you know, you know what I'm doing. I'm sorry. You're right here. It's a good example. I'm on that track of examples.
But and
So,
it
but you
makes
get what I'm
good
saying, right?
sense. For sure,
Mhm.
for sure. So, you know, kind of like on a counseling aspect, if you're giving someone the advice from life lessons you've learned, but you're not using the advice that you're giving out.
Yes, that's
Definitely.
exactly like basically what, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
Got it.
And like
When-
my friend Pam, she's a rescuer, okay? So, you know, she's a rescuer, which means whatever you need to rescue. If you need her to pick up the dogs, if you need like $20, like whatever you need. And it's a generous outpouring and it's limitless. It's literally limitless. But you know who's limited? She is. Because she'll be like, well, I really like these pair of pants, but they're really expensive. I'm not going to get them. But I'm going to get these other ones. I'm like, yeah, but you like the expensive ones, get the expensive ones. She's like, yeah, but, and so she limits herself, but she doesn't limit me. You see? So sometimes when we give the gift of ourself in that way, which is what we do, we give it without limit.
Yeah.
We just don't give it to ourselves. And then when we don't give it to ourselves, we might feel like the outside world is taking advantage of us, or that they're not doing for us what we do for them, or they don't show up for us. But what really is happening is they forgot that they're here to give a gift to humanity, and they are also human, duh. Right? You're
Yeah.
also human. So you're supposed to be like, that's what your soul came here to do. So if your soul came here to do it and your soul uses your body to do it, don't you think your body gets to get some of that too? Yes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the challenge that we face, is that we forget to, you know, to do it for ourselves. And that's really important. Yes, Britt, sorry.
No, you're good. And when you ignore it for long enough, it starts to, like, that feeling of lack, that feeling of like everybody's asking so much of me. It starts to creep into things that are not part of your soul job and not part of your calling. I've found that like everything in my life starts to hurt. Like everything is too much. Even if it's like I have to do the chores around the house for my own damn self. That so much, because I've basically like taken, you know, my bucket of energy, and by not listening to my calling, I just put a hole right in the bottom of the bucket. So nothing I do is going to plug it unless it's for that thing that I'm actively rejecting for whatever reason. Oh, that's a question I have. Why do you actively reject your calling? Why do people do that? Just asking for myself.
Let me ask, because that's a really good question. So hold on while I ask why people actively reject their calling. Oh, that's cool. That makes sense. So I asked the question, and then my spirit went from my sacral chakra and my solar plexus chakra, and then shot from my solar plexus right up above my crown chakra. That motion says that I am in a relationship with something about who I am. But when I go to do that, when I go to discover that calling, I skip my heart. I don't even touch my heart. I go right from my solar plexus right up, which means this calling is between me and God. Because what is stored in our heart chakra is not emotions, it's a measurement of love. The world teaches us what love is supposed to feel like. So if I grew up with an abusive father, then at some level, the world is supposed to be abusive. So that's what I'm going to expect. Right? So I'm going to carry these measurements of life in my heart to describe, is this love? Is this not love? Is this love? Is this not love? So if my dad was bad and I carry the measurement of love between a man and a woman in my heart that says I'm always on, like, looking out for, to make sure that love doesn't feel that way. Right? So everything from our life is measured in our heart. When I asked, why do people actively reject their calling? The way it's supposed to be is, this is between you and your soul, you and God. You know what you're doing. This is for you. But when you bring that calling back into you, your calling happens in your solar plexus. It doesn't involve anything else. It's who you are. It's God and you. That connection is so solid. It is so made. So you have inspiration. And then you're like, oh, that's totally what I'm going to do. You feel it, you know it, you feel it. And then you go for it. But then when it comes back down, you put it in your heart chakra. And in your heart chakra, you're not as smart as that lady over there. I mean, she's the one that, she already wrote a book. So, well, there's so many way better counselors than me. Like, she's been in that career for like 40 years. Like, I can't compare to that. Like, I'm starting late. Maybe I can't do that. When I was little, like, I wasn't as smart as my sister growing up. So I don't know if I can do that really for a job. So your inspiration dies the minute you measure yourself against what the world taught you that you are. I don't know if I explained that well, but you can re-say it, Britt, if I explained it. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
when your calling happens, you feel it, you know it, it's true, you're gonna do it. And then the minute you start to figure out how you're gonna do it, you're bringing it into your heart, you're bringing it back to yourself, and you get stuck in your heart. And if the world told you you can't, or you have some trauma from before, or some measurement that says you're not good enough, it dies right there.
And then you can't bring it all the way back down through your chakra system because it gets stopped here. So it can't even validate you in your solar plexus and drop to where you have a relationship with it, and then go to your root where it actually happens. So you have it's like, oh, I see it. I see what you saw. It comes from you and it goes here. And then you're like, oh, great. Thanks for that idea. And you start to pull it down and you think about it, and the comparisons start. And then you talk about it and you're like, well, I don't know if I can do that. And then you get here, and whatever is already here, it's stuck. So it never gets to, yes, this is who I am, and this is how the relationship that I have with this thing in the future and now I'm doing it. So like, I know I'm a writer, I identify as a writer, but when I think about all the things that I write and all the people, and oh my God, and if I tell people I'm a writer, they're going to wait to see if I'm writing, and I'm not as good of a writer as other people, and other people know better and I don't know better. So I'm going to stop. So it never even gets to the point where I am a writer and I make a relationship with writing and build it into my life and then do it. So I never actually write anything. And by the time like I even get to that point, I've already had to work through so much shit that writing feels exhausting.
Yes, that we can manipulate our calling in that sense. We can manipulate ourselves in that way. And that is why people actively reject their calling.
Can people have more than one calling?
I think you have one calling, but it is expressed in so many different ways that it can appear to be a different calling. Does that make sense?
Because what Britt just summarized sounds like so much stuff in my life. It was like, yeah, it's my whole life. She just talked about it. But I mean, other things that I've always wanted to do, and get inspiration on. And then it's like, oh no, I'm not good enough. Like my art, painting and stuff like that. But anyway, so I don't know what's a calling. I think, anyway, good conversation.
Maybe your calling is transformation. Maybe in that truth, what you see is you bring things to what is true for you, or what is your vision that you see. So transformation, painting, fixing up homes.
I like to make things beautiful.
You like to make things beautiful.
Garden,
anything.
A house.
And that filters into every single thing that you do.
Because when I fix these houses, I always have to make it beautiful. Like, bought an old house, for example, with the intention of rehabbing it and renting it. Of course, I had to paint it beautiful colors. My husband's like, just paint it all white. I'm like, oh, who wants to live in a white house? Ugh. I take the time to look at, okay, that's the wood tone. I plan beautiful colors and carpet. And the kitchen had a big, giant 48-inch wide sink cabinet, right? I'm like, oh, I'm cutting.
So
it.
maybe your calling is transformation, Sue.
I put a dishwasher in. He's like, why? People don't need dishwashers. I'm like, anybody today really wants to live with a dishwasher. And sure enough, my house is rent like that. Boom. I have like, 15 applications. And then how do you pick all these good between all these good people? It was like crazy. But yeah, I have to make them beautiful.
And everything. So
All of
that's
it.
the constant, that's the consistent thing. That's the common
That must be
denominator
it.
in everything that you're doing is you're making it beautiful. You're transforming it.
Yeah, I've got like a million examples of how I really suck as a housewife and end up rehabbing everything.
Well, what's more beautiful than truth, right? And that goes back to your soul job of being the truth speaker.
Oh gosh, she's amazing.
Right. I told you since she was literally like 3 years old. Okay. Like I had the shittiest day this day and I go to pick her up from daycare and I am stressed. Like I'm stressed. So I asked her how her day was. And, we had an hour drive at the time. So I asked her how her day was and she's telling me all about how her day was and everything. And then she goes, how is your day, mama? And I'm like, well, and then I literally told her all about my shitty day, which I probably shouldn't have done because she was only 3, but I did. And, she gave me advice. And I was like, oh yeah, and I said to her, I was like, oh yeah, you're way smarter than me. You're right. Tomorrow's another day. Right. I could just tell him that. Right. That's what my boss really meant. Right. Okay, great. And then that's it. Then it was like, so, oh my God. Yeah.
So then if you take that example of the communication, well, how does it come out? Right now in my life, it's coming out in writing. But maybe I could follow Joy's example, like the relationship person or the person who everybody comes to tell their problems, because guess who everybody comes to tell their problems? So I don't know, I got to write a blog about it or something so I can make those two callings, right, is the expression of my soul job of communication.
Right. So callings are many, soul job is one. So you have one, but it can express itself in so many different facets of your life.
Well, I'll be looking for that blog tab on the Alma Pure website.
Right. Okay. I've been saying it for years though. So
Gotta write for yourself first.
yep, this is true. And that's what I have said too. So awesome. All right. That's really great information. Does anybody have other examples or questions or comments about that?
So can I ask a slightly different question? If nobody
Sure.
has anything else.
Sure.
So not to go down a dark path, but so someone.
But here we go down a dark path. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. Go ahead.
I know. But a soul job, you come with a soul job. So, you see these horrible people, these people have done horrible things, the shooter with, any of the school shootings. Is that truly someone who may have come with a soul job, but based on the nurturing goes off? I mean, how do you?
So let's take like a school shooter and the act of expressing that. That's root energy, right? That's root energy. Root energy can either be somebody who will rescue you and save you and protect you, as much as it can be somebody who will beat you and knock you down and harm you. Some, women fall in love with root energy men. Why? Because they worry about me. They're so protective. They, they'll defend me. They want to make sure I go to the doctor. Like they really take care of me. And then a year later, they're like, my husband is a narcissist. He tries to control me. I'm like, but this is why you fell in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time you fell in love with him, you needed a strong root energy. And then that helped you have a strong root energy. Now you have that strong root energy. Now you don't love him anymore because now you don't need him to be a strong root energy. Mm-hmm. So what can happen to people is that, yes, that child probably came into the world and was supposed to be a soldier, a protector, a Coast Guard, a National Guard, you know, a bodyguard, you know, the kid that protects the other underdog from not getting beat up. But the nurturing, it kind of flipped it on them,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And that can happen. You can have a negative expression of your soul based on what the world tells you you are. If we would have told that boy when he was little that, oh, he can protect me, I don't think he would get a gun to shoot me.
mhm.
I think he would wrap his body around me. But that's humanity. I mean, that's why we come to have free will, to choose what do we want to do with who we are and who we come as. That part is part of the earth, part of the world.
Mm, mm.
Jesus could have used his power to like destroy everyone that stood before him because they were killing him. He could have. You know, a lot of the people in that day wanted, you know, they thought that he was going to come on a horse with an army and like kill the Romans. That's what they wanted, right? That's not what he was. That's not how he chose to express his root energy. His root energy wasn't to harm others and have an army. His root energy was to take the pain in his own body. So he chose to take the pain to his own body instead of inflicting the pain on the Romans and on other human beings. So he took it. So he also had a choice.
Mhm.
And his choice came at that moment of transfiguration when he went on the mountain. And then he became that white light. And his apostles saw him and he said, don't tell anybody like what you saw, like that he became that light. That's the moment that that transfiguration happened, where that choice has been made. Right now I am, you know, that. And so that's what our challenge is.
Interesting. Thank you.
Would it be fair to say that, like, if your soul contract, right, like you came in here, like you had talked about before, like, okay, yours is empathy, and you came into a family that was going to teach you empathy, right? So that was part of the contract, right? That they're going to teach you this. So there has to be some type of balance, correct? That you have a choice between, we'll use like the school shooter for an example. You have a choice based upon your experiences, but also your contract. That, so what happened if somebody came in here and said, my sole job is to inflict pain onto people based upon the pain that I received, and I will learn a lesson from this, and other people will be, you know, like whatever, you know, there's karma, there's dharma, there's a lot of things that are connected to it, right? So I think it becomes very complex, but I guess how do you decipher between your contract, your calling, and your sole job if they're in confliction? Like, you know what
Are
I'm
they in confliction though? Because as you asking that question, I get a vision
Yeah.
of Jonathan Rumi, who now I think is Jesus, but I get a vision of Jesus who is expressing love your enemy. That's the first part of the vision. And then the second part of the vision is Judas. And Jesus at that Last Supper, where he's explaining to the disciples that somebody is going to betray him. And when Judas betrayed him, Jesus wasn't that surprised, right? Like he obviously knew somebody was going to betray him, so he knew it was happening. He could have ran, but he didn't run, so he knew. And the person that betrayed him was Judas. So when Judas comes up to him with the Roman soldiers, what does Jesus do? He kisses him. He kisses him and he welcomes him. Why does he do that? He says in his teaching that he's going to, you know, they were all asking him, who's going to betray you, Lord? Who is it? Who's the one that's going to betray you? Is it me, Lord? Am I the one that's going to betray you? Like the apostles were asking him at that dinner, who is it? And he says, it's the one to whom I give the bread. And then Judas took the bread and he ate the bread. So is that an indication, like Jesus already knew it was Judas? He knew the day he met Judas, that Judas was the one that was going to sell him out for 30 pieces of silver where he would experience his crucifixion. He already knew this. So why welcome Judas in? Like, why let him be part of the group? Was Judas's contract such that he had to do this? Because the end result is that others benefited from it. And that we have a savior because Judas was an asshole, sold out his best friend, which Jesus already seemed to know. So is there an occasion where your contract may be like that? I don't think that we ever have a contract that tells us what evil to commit. I think that that is just a result of its own. I think we act based on our turmoil of not knowing our own divinity. And that's just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. So any act we take is, nothing is bad or good, actually.
Well, and that's what I was.
Even the school shooter, even like, we want to say he's bad. We want to say we hate him, but we want to say, all the bad things. But what's going to happen here? What's a result of this? Whose lives are going to change because of this? And will there be pain? Yes, there will be pain. But he was in pain. He wasn't loved first. This boy wasn't loved first. But we want to hate him. But really, if we think about it, can we hate him? Really? We want to. We think we should. But what if we saw the turmoil in his heart? Then would we hate him or would we understand at some level? Right? We've all felt rage. None of us are different in that. We've all had intense emotions where later we totally regret what we did and we wish we wouldn't have done it. Said something, done something, hit someone, punched something. We've all done it. So we have experienced every emotion that that kid was feeling. But we had some kind of nurturing that said that even though we're feeling that, it doesn't mean we get a gun and go shoot people. It means that our parents did something or society did something to teach us that that's not how we should express the inner pain. He obviously didn't have that same education. And when they had the opportunity to help him, they obviously didn't help him, or he wouldn't have shot his grandma in the face and then went and killed a bunch of people. Right? So should we hate him? Shouldn't we hate him? I don't know.
Well, I don't necessarily ever. I think just being in my field, I always look at, I'm like, well, there's obviously something that happened. You could go down to a kid.
Marissa's studying psychology. She said the same thing to me last night. She's like, well, obviously something. Go ahead, Maddie, you can talk if you want, but she's like, obviously something happened here. So,
yeah,
right.
I mean, there could be a kid who like wets the bed, and I'm like, well, obviously there's something else that is triggered. Like, I don't, I obviously don't condone murdering people. I guess dependent, maybe if it's like in benefit of like helping many people, right? But in the sense of like, like a Jeffrey Dahmer, like that kind of person. I understand the background or the psychology of why he is the version that he is, the mental, issues that he dealt with. So I understand that. So I don't think anything is good or bad, but I think I just meant the confliction of, so if there isn't, right, there's an extent, like you didn't come here and sign it, like, I'm going to go bomb this building, sign my name.
No, I don't think that, right.
You know what I'm saying? But the sense is the level of extreme is based upon your nurturing or your experiences that are going to then dictate. So just the conflictual part of that could have been turned, but maybe like you were saying before, like it didn't go into the heart space because of not, thinking you were wrong, thinking you're a piece of garbage, thinking you were not worth it. And then all of that kind of turned into the negative aspect that conflicts with what could have been something really good, or, good or really bad, however we want to quote it. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Totally, 100%. I agree with every single thing you just said.
yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's it's complex, but simple.
Can I add something to that? So, everyone sees everything through their own lens. So, I mean, even when you're born, you have your lens, but then society, your nurturing is going to dictate how your lens sees these things. So no two people are going to, if you have the same exact experience, you're going to see it different. You're going to process it different. So it goes back to like the nurturing. So, even if these same two people live the same life, they can come out with a completely different view of the life just because it's how their lens sees it. And neither one is wrong. It's just different. Everyone is different. No two people see anything exactly the same. And I know I'm doing a horrible job of explaining that, but
I think you did a great job of explaining that, because everybody is going to have, that's one of the workshops I teach, actually, called State of Being. But it is, everybody has a certain set of glasses that they're wearing, and that's how they view the world.
Right.
And that's how they interact with the world. And if these glasses are of a negative perception, you're always chasing experiences and trying to create experiences that are the exact opposite, not negative. So you try like hell not to make them negative, but no matter what you do, they turn out negative. Right. And so you keep like hitting this same wall. And that's if you have this negative experience. What if you have a conditioning that's like really positive, though? Then you're going to chase that your whole life. You're going to try to make every experience super, super positive. The measurement is that one experience when you were 7, and now nothing is going to achieve it. So you're never going to find happiness. Right. The more you seek something, the less you find it. The more you try to avoid something, the more you run into it. And that's why it doesn't matter if your conditioning is positive or negative. It's really what you do with it and how you are guided to deal with that in your life.
Yeah. And so you can always change.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can change your thinking. I mean, that's like, you see adults going through therapy and all this stuff from childhood comes out. And once you actually deal with and come to, an adjustment with these things that happen with you, and then you're finally okay with it in your head, then you can look at it differently. You know what I'm saying? But like, you have to be able to change your own thinking. If what was nurtured to you was negative, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen so many people just, finally deal with issues from their childhood and be able to move past those things and look at things in their life differently than they did a few years beforehand.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments? This is really good information, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing. Any other questions for me or about our topic today?
I have something to add on to what Joy just said.
Sure. Is that you, Britt?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay? We're in the car.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to add on to that is the goal, it sounds like what you're identifying is that the goal is to be able to see the world for the truth of it and not for what your humanity imposed upon you. And isn't that enlightenment, right? Enlightenment is being able to say, I see the truth no matter what my life told me about this situation, no matter what anybody, society, my circumstances, my state of being, I can take those glasses off. And that's the whole goal of connecting with your spirit, right? Is to be able to take the glasses off.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge part that's connected to the healing and to finding clarity about those different experiences, like finding the silver lining. But yes, you can take off the glasses. It's really interesting you brought that up. I had a session today with a lady that we were discussing her son. And she said her son was 10, but when I connected with his energy, he was like 12 or 13 in his mind. And he was a great communicator, and he was like talking to me, and I was not having any problems, connecting with his spirit. And so then his mom said, well, he's nonverbal. He doesn't speak. He's on autistic. And I was like, no way. Like, there's no way, because I'm having such great communication with him. And what you were talking about, Britt, is like taking the lenses off. When I asked this little boy's spirit, like, can you tell me about how you perceive information? Can you share like anything about how you perceive information? He showed me that oh my God, this is so weird. I can't believe this is exactly what I saw when I asked the question about why people actively reject their calling. Holy crap. Anyway, I asked him, and he went from his solar plexus up above his crown chakra, and then he brought it right back down, and he didn't stop in the heart. And so his communication is all truth. It's all how it fits him. And he never put the glasses on.
Holy
and we
shit.
try. Yeah, right. Okay. Can you explain it better? But do you know what I mean? Like, we all have glasses on. This kid doesn't have any glasses on. Therefore, what the heck is he supposed to talk about? He's like, he is trying to become verbal, his spirit said, right? But he said that becoming verbal was more for others than for himself, because verbal has a requirement when we attach it to our heart.
Right.
Which is our conditioning. Okay.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean or no?
Yes. So he's all energy, right? He's all energy, and it's like, it's like a hose, right? Everybody has a hose attached to their house. And when you don't have an attachment on the end of the hose, the water just comes spilling out. You can't control it. You can't mitigate it. You can't direct it anywhere. It just comes blowing out. But when you put an attachment on the hose, then the water does what you want it to do. But that changes the water. It changes how fast it comes out. It changes how much you get. You're contextualizing the water. You're a limit. You're limiting the water. But if you don't limit water, everything gets wet and it flows. So he's pure energy without an attachment of expectation of humanity. He is not limited by the expression that he is humanly capable of. He can just be free energy. Does that make sense?
So to clarify, the attachment is the glasses?
Yeah, the attachment is the glasses. You're muted, Ma.
Yeah, I was, because the dog started barking and I wanted to listen to what you were saying. So, it's interesting, because when I asked his spirit, the little boy, like, okay, what should I talk to your mom about? And he said, teach her how to talk to me in energy. So I spent a big portion of our session teaching the mom, like, me and the mom were doing spirit to spirit communication and seeing how well she could translate what my spirit was telling her, and vice versa. So I would like ask her a question, and then I would say, okay, I'm gonna tell my spirit the answer, and then you give your spirit like a limit. Tell your spirit, show me something between like 9 and 15, and to answer Nikki's question. And then I wanted to see, and she was hitting it, like she was getting the right answer. So I was like, okay, now you kind of know how it works. So now start doing it with your son, because that's how he communicates. He was showing me like songs, he was showing me colors, and sometimes like he likes red mostly. He likes heavy metal music that he listens to. And I'm like, but only when he's got a lot of like rambunctious energy and he's got to do stuff. She's like, oh yeah, usually. I'm like, it's when he's frustrated. It's when he has to express root energy. So like, he told me that he's been communicating this whole time, no problem. The ones that have a problem in understanding him are the people around him, because he doesn't get stuck in the heart chakra and doesn't get stuck to any conditioning. He never put the glasses on.
Okay, lay down. Lay down.
Because it's not interpreted how we're used to, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. So I think, so the mom was gonna we're gonna get back together in a couple weeks and see how it goes, and see if it's working. And if she's able to connect and communicate with him like that. So okay, awesome. You guys, this was fun. Thank you so much for connecting. I love you. And I'll see you guys next month.
See y'all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay, bye.